BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services, formerly known as Proteus Cloud Services (PCS), allows customers to deploy domains to externally hosted cloud DNS service using BlueCat Address Manager, while manage a write copy of these domains on a BlueCat DNS server that resides in their premises. First, let's identify some of the key details and the prerequisites customers have to obtain and set up in their environment in order to establish a successful implementation. Here are some of the key details that customers have to know and expect when configuring BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services. BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services server can only be applied as a secondary DNS deployment role in Address Manager, and you can only have one BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services server in a configuration. Also, keep in mind, it cannot be used in an XHA pair configuration. Here are some of the prerequisites you need to set up in your environment. Upon your purchase of this product, you'll obtain a username, password, and an account number that will be used to authenticate to the hosting services API server. You have to configure firewall rules to allow port 443 outbound to establish a secure connection to the hosting services API server. For successful zone transfers, you need to allow port 53 UDP and TCP inbound and outbound, and also allow access to your BlueCat primary name server from these name servers listed here. The registrar has to be updated as well for delegation to point to these name servers. Each primary DNS server holding a primary copy of one or more externally hosted DNS zones either needs its service interface IP address be exposed to the internet or have a published interface defined in BAM and deployed. This IP address will be added to the hosting services provider allow list. And now let's dive into the lab. In this demo, I'm going to explain how to add and manage BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services in BlueCat Address Manager. In my lab, I'm using BlueCat Address Manager version 9.2, and I have a pre-configured zones called bc-example.com in my external view. As you can see here, also, under the deployment rules, I have defined a primary DNS server with a master role, and I have already successfully deployed that zone to the server. One way to validate that, click on servers, click on the primary DNS server, diagnostics, and then execute the view DNS configuration. It will display the name.conf file from the BDDS server. If we expand the zone that we have deployed, and this is the configuration. What's missing here, because I haven't deployed yet my BlueCat External Hosted Services server, is basically the statements for the IP addresses of the external DNS server, as well as the policy or the statement for the allow notify. So once we deploy the external BlueCat Hosted Services server, we'll come back here and then we can validate those statements added. All right, so let's click on servers and start by deploying or adding the secondary DNS server that is basically hosted on the hosting services provider. I click on new, server. I choose from the profile, BlueCat External DNS Hosted Services, PCS. I put in a name. For this demo, I have chosen this name. The server API URL is also populated. The credentials that was obtained or provided by BlueCat. So I'm going to put here the username, the account number, and of course, the password. Upon doing that, I'm going to click on Verify Hosting Server Connection to validate that my credential would successfully authenticate to the API server. And as we can see, it has been validated and verified correctly and successfully. Now I click on add. And as we can see, we have added our secondary DNS server successfully into the address manager. The next step basically would be to click on the DNS server and navigate to the zone. In this case, we have bc-example.com. Click on the deployment roles. And under the deployment roles, I'm going to add my secondary DNS server. I choose from the type list slave role. The server interface will be my secondary DNS server. I choose the server interface and I click add. And I'm going to click add again. I have added successfully my secondary DNS server, and the role is assigned as slave or secondary. The next step would be to go to the servers tab and deploy this configuration to both the primary and the secondary. And the reason I need to deploy to both, in order for the primary server to be aware of the secondary server being having a second copy of the zone. So all the name servers will be added to the configuration, as well as the statements for allow zone and notify in the name.com file. So I'll go ahead and deploy this changes. Click force full, and I click yes. As we can see, both deployments completed successfully. So let's go to the primary server and validate some of the settings that has been added after this deployment. I click on the primary DNS server, diagnostics tab, and I execute the DNS configuration. I expand the zone that I have deployed. And as you can see, now this allow transfer has been updated with this IP block, which basically represents the hosted services provider secondary servers, as well as the allow notify, which will make sure that any update that happens to the primary DNS server in terms of resource records will basically notify the secondary servers, and the zone transfer will take care of replicating or transferring those records to the secondary server. Another way to validate would be basically through the command line. So let me show you how can you validate that. So I have I've SSH to the primary server, and by simply doing a dig against the zone that I have added, putting NS record, as you can see, these are the 6 name servers that basically act as a secondary and will have a copy of that zone. Now, since it's a restricted environment with a BlueCat, and this zone is basically a test zone, I want to be able to, and of course is not updated within the registrar, so I want to be able to do a simple dig to the internet and get a reply back. But I do have another example, which basically here on my jumper server, I'm going to attempt to dig BlueCat networks.com and put NS. And as you can see, this is what you would expect to return. All the name servers, the 6 name servers that are hosted at the hosting services provider that acts as secondary for the BlueCat networks.com. Now, if we attempt to basically go and delete this name server, it's very simple steps. So basically under the servers tab, you click on the secondary DNS server and you select this option. You confirm, and this will basically remove this external secondary DNS server from all the deployment or associated roles that has been assigned to. Click yes, and it will be deleted. Once it's deleted from the address manager, this doesn't mean it was also removed from the hosting account or hosting servers. Please contact BlueCat customer care to help you out on taking care of deleting that zone from the hosting services account. And with that, we conclude our demo. Please visit bluecatnetworks.com for more information